Outside of Trade Center earliest recorded quiz in history, another fact the audience could care less about. The Quizmaster loves these silly percentage questions. What percentage chance does Toronto have of acquiring St. Louis center Brayden Schenn before the deadline? 0, 25, 50, or 67, which I believe is a immature reference to the last time they won the Stanley Cup.
25%. I just don't think the St. Louis Blues want to move this player. I don't think the player wants to get moved. He's loved on the team. He just played his 1,000th game there, and I think the price is just, it's old school thinking, but I think of the first round, everything they're asking for Brayden Schenn, it's just to be too much. I don't think it's going to happen.
67% for me, and that's only because the Quizmaster did not give us an option between 50 and 60%. But when you look at it, someone like Brayden Schenn, he checks a lot of the boxes, played for Berube. They've won a Stanley Cup together. Berube was very complimentary the other day, and he fills a void down the middle, and he's not a rental. Although, as you mentioned, that with them in the thick of it, St. Louis, it's going to drop. And I would also be looking at Scott Laughton as a secondary if it doesn't work out.
50% for me because it's as close to a non-answer as you can provide. Yeah. It might happen, but then again, it may not. That's Bobby Mack all day long.
He has taught you well, Danielson. In the wake of Saturday's seismic Seth Jones deal, who enters deadline week as the Eastern Conference frontrunner to reach the Stanley Cup final. Is it Florida? Is it Tampa Bay? Is it Toronto? Or is it Washington, Cheryl?
Florida for me, and just getting Seth Jones. You just look at that top 4 defensemen for the Florida Panthers. I think the big thing here is they want to win the Atlantic and make their road a little bit easier. And I think when you look at Forsling, Ekblad, Mikkola, I think they've advanced themselves pretty well right now.
I like the Toronto Maple Leafs, I do, for the obvious reasons, aside from the second half of that first period. But I do look at Florida, and then I look at some of the other teams. Washington having a heck of a year, Tampa Bay and Carolina. Really good teams in the East, but despite what Brad Treliving said in the pregame show, it is more open in the East.
Florida Panthers, it's just very difficult to get out of my mind watching them go to the Stanley Cup Finals the last 2 years, the way they find ways to get it done, the way they bear down come playoff time, and they just physically overwhelm their opponents and make the opponents quit. It's tough to not pick them.
With Mikko Rantanen's short and long-term future in Carolina uncertain, we ask, where is Rantanen most likely to finish this season? Is it Carolina? Is it L.A., New Jersey, Vegas perhaps?
I'm going with Carolina. I think it's crazy to think that you would acquire this player and not finish the season with him. I know there's been some preliminary talks and maybe the number isn't right. I don't even know if he likes Carolina, but to acquire this type of talent, you would think that he would finish this season a Carolina Hurricane and go on a playoff run.
I mean, that makes sense, but I'm going to be different, and I'm going to say the Los Angeles Kings, because there was no certainty when they made the trade to Carolina with Colorado for Mikko Rantanen. How can you just let that asset walk for free? And I know L.A. is among the teams that checked in and perhaps moved back based on the sticker shock of the player.
Carolina for me, because the time is now, and you go out and you get a Rantanen because he can play in the playoffs. So I think you give this time to see if he likes Carolina, introduce him to some golf courses. But when you look at a 6'4" man who can make plays the way he does, who has 101 points in 81 games, you got him to be a playoff performer.
This is the boldest and the most important question, I think. For the greater good of the NHL, the Pittsburgh Penguins, and himself, should Sidney Crosby request a trade during the offseason, if not in the unlikely event this week? True or false, Dregs?
True. And there's a couple of reasons why. I mean, if it were to happen this week, and I mean, what are the Mystic Mike percentages of that? Pretty low, given the fact that, Crosby is a celebrated Pittsburgh Penguin, decorated, all of those things. But then you look to the offseason, the possibilities and the teams that would line up, assuming he wants to continue to chase for a Stanley Cup. It'd be great for the league if or when he does it.
True for me, because the question's listed as for the greater good. We saw the Four Nations face off. Everyone tuned in to watch Crosby play, and people want to continue to watch Crosby play in meaningful games in his 20th season. So with the Pittsburgh Penguins, I don't think it's going to happen. No. I would love to see him play postseason hockey.
True. I don't want to see Sid go down like this. It's a mess in Pitt. They're terrible. Yeah. You go back to watching Raymond Bourque take off the Boston Bruins jersey, put on the Colorado Avalanche jersey. Anything different for Sid, having him come in the be in the playoffs and be a part of the Stanley Cup playoffs, it's got to happen because it's not happening there.
Dregs mocked the quiz in the first question, pandered to the Leafs audience in the second question, was bold in the third one, referenced Mystic Mike in the fourth.
Send it.
He was all over the map, and it's worthy of the first afternoon belt of the season.